So welcome to day 9 of our Python course. Okay. Yeah, it's day 8 of our Python course. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and create day 8.py. Right. So for today, it's also going to be another short lecture. We're going to look at functions. Right. So these lectures are short for now. They're not exactly 1 hour long because I want you guys to understand the core concepts before we start diving deeper. If we start having long lectures right now, it might confuse you guys. So our lectures will get longer as time goes. Okay. So by the end of today's lesson, I want you to know what a function is and how to create what a function. Right. So, right, a function, right? So we're looking at functions, right? So let's think about something outside programming as our example, right? Imagine a washing machine, dirty clothes. So you take your dirty clothes, put them in the washing machine, and they are now clean clothes, right? You don't need to understand every individual or operation happening inside the washing machine. You simply use it, you give it clothes, it performs a job, you get a result, right? So a function works in a similar way, right? You have an input, you put it inside the function, then you get an output, right? So a function is a reusable block of code, right? Designed to perform a specific job, right? So a function is a reusable block of code designed to perform a specific job, right? So instead of writing the same code repeatedly, we can put it inside a function and use that function whenever we need it, right? So for example, let's say to create a function, right, we use the def keyword, right? So this def keyword tells Python that we are now defining a function. After the def keyword, you then write your function name, right? So after writing your function name, you should add these round brackets, right? After the round brackets, you should add what? A colon. Okay. So then after adding a colon, that's when you press what? Enter on your keyboard, and Python is going to indent what? The code automatically for you. So everything that falls under this def keyword and it's indented, it tells Python that this block of code is inside our function. So when you call our function, you're supposed to execute this block of code, right? So remember that to create a function, you use the def keyword followed by the name of the function, right? And then you these round brackets and the colon. Then you can now write your code. What are the functions supposed to do, right? So after doing this, then you have to call your function, right? If I run the code right now, it's not going to do anything. I'm not running the code. Look at the terminal, right? See, nothing happened in the terminal, right? nothing happened in the terminal because what, we only defined the function, we didn't call it, right? So after defining the function, in order for us to use that function, we need to call it, and in order for you to call it, you have to what, just write the function name and the round brackets, and make sure that it's outside what of the def keyword. It's not indented inside what the def keyword, right? So this is how you call it a function. Call a function, right? Here we define a function, right? Now I'm running the function again. If you look at the terminal, you can see that it's now printed what, hello. It printed this because what, we defined the function, then we called it. Alright, so when you define a function, you just create a function, and then when you call a function, that's when you tell Python that it's supposed to run what, this function. Okay, right? So right now, right, our function currently always says hello. Whenever we call our function, it's going to say hello. But what if I wanted to say hello different people, like hello Brandon, hello Tadiwa, hello Tawanda, etc., right? So this means that our function is not reusable, right? In order for this function to be reusable, we can give our function what, information, right? So okay, let me comment this out, right? So I'll create another function, and I'll call this one what, parameter. I'll call this one parameter function, right? Then I'll add this variable name, then a print function hello name, right? Then here I'll call the parameter function, let's say Brandon, right? So this variable, right, is called what, a parameter. Whenever you say variable here, when you're creating your function or when you're defining your function, this is a parameter, right? And then this variable that you assign, this value that you assign when you're calling your function, this is an argument, right? So we have a parameter and an argument, right? So it's actually one and the same thing but different meanings, because you get to use them in different cases, right? So when you define your function, you add parameters. When you call your function, you add what, arguments, right? So here our function is now reusable. It is what, this variable called what, name. So we can access this variable within anywhere inside what, in our function, right? Now the advantage with this variable, when Python prints hello name, it's not going to print hello name, it's going to print hello Brandon, hello whatever, depending on what's assigned to that parameter. Let's say parameter function, and I'm going to say Nyasha, right? See, here I code the function with what, the argument Brandon, and I code the function again with the argument what, Nyasha. I'm now running the code. See, if you look at the terminal, it printed what, hello Brandon, hello Nyasha, right? So it's what, one function but two different outputs. That's because our function is now what, reusable. We can pass information into what, into our functions, right? So we use our parameters and arguments to pass information, right, to our functions. right? So we use parameters and arguments to pass information into our functions. Then we can use that information within our function, right? So one function, multiple uses. That is the power of reusable code, right? So any questions with how to create a function and what's a parameter and what's an argument? Any question?
Sorry, sir. I didn't raise the hand, but my question is a function definition. You really have to include the word name within it?
No.
Because I can see. Okay.
Here on your as a parameter.
Yes, as a parameter.
No, you can use any name that you want, any variable.
Oh, okay.
For even if I say I, it still works.
Okay.
I said
but
I.
the other three factors must be included, like parameter, like function.
No, these two, no. You can use any name you want when you're creating a function. What's needed is this word def, right? These are round brackets and this colon. So only these three are the things that you're not supposed to change: the def word, the round brackets, and the colon.
Okay, thank you so much.
So you can change these other names.
Okay, understood.
Okay, great. Let me comment this out. Right. So sometimes a function doesn't just perform an action, right? Sometimes we want it to calculate something and give us the answer, right? So I wanted to just calculate what something and give us the answer is the response, right? So we can have what? So let's create another function and we're going to call this one 8 numbers, right? And this function is going to take two parameters. This one is took one parameter, but this one is going to take what? Two parameters. Parameter 1 is A and parameter 2 is going to be B, right? So whenever your function takes two parameters, you use what? A comma to separate those parameters, right? So then return A plus B, right? So here we've now introduced what? A new keyword, which is what? The return keyword, right? So what return does, right? Return sends a value out of a function, right? So return just sends a value out of the function. So we're going to call our function. Our function does whatever calculations or whatever code it needs to do. When it's done, it just gives us back an answer, right? So it will return what? An answer, right? For example, let's say result, right, is equals to, we assign we create a variable called result, and the value of that variable is going to be what? Our function, and we assign the numbers 5 and 3. Then we print result, right? I'm now running the code. See, it printed 8. So here our function received that two values, right? That's two parameters, right? So then we have the return A plus B, right? So what this does is just it returns the answer to this. So return is just going to calculate, is just going to add a plus b, so which is 5 plus 3. It's just going to add 5 plus 3, and then if the answer is 8, then it just what returns what 8. It returns the answer, right? So this is very important. Knowing how to use the return keyword is very important, because sometimes we have a function that is only supposed to do 1 or 2 3 things. After doing those 2 or 3 things, it's supposed to return an answer like maybe done, or it returns the answer like 8, like in the situation. Then we can now then take that answer and do something with it somewhere within your code, right? So the purpose of functions is so that you cannot, is that instead of repeating yourself writing the same code over and over again, you can just write the code inside a function and then just call that function from anywhere within your code, right? So you just use it once and call it many times, as much as you want, right? So any questions with the return keyword? Any questions? Yes, Mr. Tinashe.
Okay, stay. I wanted to ask what executes first between the return or the print statement, that print result, or the return. What executes first?
Good question. So between this return statement and this print result,
Exactly.
okay, so what's going to happen here is that Python will see, okay, we created a function, we defined a function, okay, that's fine. It's going to acknowledge this function. After acknowledging this function, then it goes to line 19. So when it goes to line 19, it will say, okay, I have a variable called result, right? And the value of this variable is what? It's that function that I created. So which means it's supposed to what? Add these two numbers. So like, okay, so the function add, and the value is now that function that I created, and it has 2 arguments, 5 plus 3. And my function was adding a plus b, so it's adding 5 plus 3. They need to acknowledge that, right? So when you go to line 20, print result, then that's when it's going to calculate a plus b. So meaning that Python already knows what it's supposed to do before line 20 executes, right? So which means it's going to start by executing what? Line 19, then it executes line 20. After executing line 20, then that's when these a plus b are going to run.
Okay, I think I get it, but it's real tricky. Thank you.
Yes, it is a bit tricky, but the more you create projects and the more you will also learn new concepts. Since when you learn new concepts, you'll also be working with these concepts that you did before. Then you're going to understand it as we dive deeper.
Okay, thank you. That's okay.
Okay. So any questions are with functions? Okay. I want us to look at something very important when working with functions, right? That is what we call we have what scope, right? So inside scope we have global scope and local scope, right? So these two are very different things, very different. right? So let me create our function def, let's just call it my func, right? This is it taking, okay, let's say message equals to hi, this is a local scope, right? Print message. Okay, so let me comment this out. Let me say def my func1, right? Here let me add a print message. Okay, print message 1. Okay, so let me just put this below, right? So message 1 is equals to this is a global scope, right? I want us to look at line 31 into line 33, right? Okay, so let me also, outside the function, let's just say print, let's just say print message 1, right? So I'm now going to run the code. We're working from line 31 to line 35, right? I'm now running the code. Oh, I forgot to call the function my func1, right? I'm now running the code. See, it printed what? This is a global scope and this is a global scope, right? We can all see that. Confirm.
Yes, we can see it. Yes.
Okay, great then. Right. So a global scope, right, is a variable that is outside, is a variable that doesn't belong to any function or to any block of code. It's at the top of your code, like here message 1. See, message 1 is at the top of our code. I can access that variable from within our function, and I can still access that variable from outside our function. So whether I'm inside the function or I am outside the function, I can access that variable, right? So then we have what you call local scope, right? So here I created a variable called message. Hi, this is a local scope. That's the value of the variable, right? Inside our function, I printed the variable, and inside the function, I printed the same variable again, right? Let me call my func, right? So let me run the code. See, when I ran the code, it printed hi, this is a local scope, showing that line 29 executed. So meaning that my function has access to to this variable, right? But when it was time for line 30 to execute, it was also supposed to print this variable, this message, but we got an error code, name error. Name message is not defined, right? So we got this error because our variable is inside the function. So meaning that if we want to access this variable, we need to call it from within our function. If you go outside your function, you won't be able to access that variable because it's a local scope, only hard-coded to what? To your function. Like, so any questions with global and local scope? Any questions? So we're all on the same page.
Exactly, sir.
Okay. So this is what I prepared for you guys. Talk about global scope, local scope, how to create a function, and what are parameters and arguments, and also the return keyword, right? So for everything that we covered today, do you guys have any question? Any question?
Not from me, sir.
I don't have.
Okay. So then, so we all understand how local scope and global scope work, right? So if there are no questions, then that's it for today's lectures. For today's lecture.